She nudged the plate of kraken. "Your toast grows cold." "So it does." He lifted the plate, and reaching for the tankard, spoke from the corner of his mouth. "Under a tall pine tree, not too far from the Egyptian Avenue, there's a glowing fairy ring in Highgate Cemetery. I've heard whispers about nighttime dances." As he returned to his scruffy friends, she stared after him, poleaxed. Not at his suggestion that mythological creatures might well exist, but that there was a fairy circle in Highgate Cemetery. Exciting news all on its own, but the possibility of pine mushrooms, that particular detail held much allure. Tricholoma, an edible mycorrhizal mushroom prized for its complex odour, fruity and spicy, but also musty, but primarily for its rumoured health benefits. A mushroom that could be fermented to produce a mildly alcoholic beverage. Damn him! Her weakness for all things yeast was well known. Her thesis did, after all, focus upon the role of beer and bread in early Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations. What she kept closer was her fascination with all things fermentable, specifically as applied to traditional foods. She could count on one hand the number of people who knew of her interest in folklore that could be tied to fungi. A pine mushroom fairy ring in London. The perfect lure. Not that she had any business running off to a cemetery, collecting mushrooms to set up in the still room. Nothing would come of it. Not unless she was prepared to commit to Oxford. Was she?
Which had led him to London, and to the doorstep of the monocled raven. The past months had been hot, dusty, and exhausting. Much as he wished for a few hours to himself, if only to shake the last of the desert sand from his socks, there'd been no time for respite. No time to pull the peace offering he'd carried for endless miles from his suitcase. No time to formulate a way to approach Julia unseen. For that reason alone, he wanted this case finished, wrapped up and tied with a bow. Oh, promises, promises, Black grumbled at his side. Marston won't have involved her, Graham insisted. Did he truly believe that? Or was he trying to convince himself because he'd once hoped to make Julia his wife? As if he'd ever stood a chance at enticing her into matrimony. From the beginning of their affair, she'd made it perfectly clear to him that she intended to marry Professor Marston. Not once had she deviated from her chosen path, no matter how many nights she'd slept in Graham's bed, wrapped in his arms, the silk of her skin warm beneath his lips. So you insist, Black shrugged. But neither is she unaware of his activities, or Harlow's. You spoke with her. His voice rose with each word. Marston, for all his affable demeanor, possessed a ruthless streak. I did, covertly. Foundations were laid. He swallowed back a low growl. Black was his superior, and had laughed off his concerns. Black continued. I approached Mrs. Marston with an offer to leave her position at the British Museum and work instead within the hallowed halls of the Lister Institute. She declined, angling for a position at Oxford instead. And you replied? That I'd see it arranged. I expect she'll come around. Graham did not.